that was being tested at that time was suffering from.
He made the world laugh. Every time he bent over backwards, contorted his face, or burst into an absurd dance, we howled with delight. Millions of ticket stubs, stadium seats, and millions more glued to their screens. Yet behind that infectious grin and cinematic brilliance lay a secret storm. This is the story of Jim Carrey, a man who gave us endless joy and laughter, but concealed a pain no one ever heard. We think of Ace Ventura, or The Mask, and remember a fearless clown, a shape-shifting comedic chameleon. We remember the manic energy, the explosive humor, but we forget the silent tears that followed him home, the nights he stared at the ceiling and wondered if he could go on. Yet as the spotlights dim and the curtain falls, the emptiness lingers, as if the laughter never happened. Born into a family teetering on the brink of collapse, his childhood was as bleak as any drama he would later lampoon on screen. His father, Percy, a musician and accountant, struggled to keep the lights on, while his mother, Kathleen, battled chronic pain and a growing addiction to painkillers. They were physically present, but emotionally distant. Between whispered conversations of mortality and the clinking of pill bottles, young Jim learned that even love could feel like abandonment. He watched his siblings shoulder burdens no child should bear, and he hid his anxiety behind a forced smile, as if the world would recoil at the sight of his tears. These early scars carved grooves in his heart that no spotlight could illuminate. They taught him to laugh in order to survive. At age 10, Jim Carrey discovered his superpower: mimicry. In the cramped kitchen, he became anyone he observed, an impersonation of his father's nervous tics, a perfect rendition of his mother's soft sighs, and eventually, a host of celebrity icons he saw on modest television screens. Laughter erupted around him, a currency far more valuable than dinner in those days. Even when the family lost their home and slept for months in a rusting Volkswagen van on the shores of Lake Ontario, young Jim kept the darkness at bay by performing nightly shows for his brothers and sisters. In that van, under the dim glow of damp camp lanterns, he honed the art that would one day fill arenas, though none of those 6-year-old audiences suspected they were witnessing the birth of a legend forged in misery. When he turned 15, his script flipped. With a single suitcase, a tattered check for $10 million folded in his wallet, and a heart bursting with dreams, Jim boarded a bus, bound for Toronto's Yak Yaks Comedy Club. It was raw, it was ragged, and the audience was unforgiving. He contorted, he shouted. He reached for the sky with every facial distortion he could conjure, and then it happened. The laughter didn't come. The crowd whispered, jeered, and booed. That night, he learned failure in its purest form. He trudged home, defeated, yet something deep inside refused to break. He practiced in front of a cracked bathroom mirror until his reflection begged for mercy, then practiced some more. Imperfection became his teacher, and determination his ally. He scraped his knuckles against broken tiles, but inside, his spirit gleamed with newfound resolve. By dawn, he headed to a factory job, cleaning grime off giant wheels and inhaling the fumes of rubber and steel. While others his age dreamed of dates and prom nights, Jim shouldered responsibility beyond his years. Dyslexia made coursework a battlefield, but he fought on with relentless practice, scribbling jokes in margins of notebooks and muttering punchlines to himself on the factory line. Every mocking glance, every stumble, only fueled his drive. He had tasted a particular type of hunger, the hunger to belong, to be seen, to make sense of a life crumbling around him. His resolve hardened like steel tempered by flame, and he refused to let poverty or prejudice script his fate. He found solace in the echo of empty halls where he practiced his voice, imagining future crowds hanging on every syllable. In the stillness of the night, his laughter rang louder than any factory siren, reminding him of the power he held in his bones. Then came the tipping point, a late-night tour stop where danger and delight collided. Rodney Dangerfield handed him the microphone mid-show, and suddenly Jim's world exploded in laughter and light. For a fleeting moment, he stood tall, believing the pain might finally fade. But backstage, the old emptiness returned faster than applause could drown it out. He had won the battle on stage, But the war inside was only beginning, and the struggle seemed eternal. He stepped off the bus in Los Angeles, with nothing but a duffel bag, a fragile check for $10 million folded in his jacket, and the echo of a single question: could he redefine tragedy as triumph? Hollywood's glare was unforgiving. His first destination was the Improv Club, where Johnny Carson's shadow loomed large, and dreams went to die if you couldn't make him laugh. With jittery confidence, Jim took to the stage, face contorted, limbs flailing, voice ricocheting through the empty room. The initial silence was a verdict, an icy declaration that Hollywood did not yield easy victories. Whispers curled around him until the owner finally asked him to leave. It was rejection in its purest form, yet inside Jim, something combustible ignited, a vow that every closed door would become a stage for his defiance. Weeks passed in a blur of auditions and odd jobs. He landed a minor role in The Duck Factory, a sitcom that offered a glimmer of hope but fizzled quickly under harsh criticism and low ratings. Casting directors summarily dismissed him as too extreme, unmarketable, a wild card not worth betting on. Each no branded him further as an outcast. Yet rather than retreat, he refined his anomalies into his signature: the bizarre facial tics, the unpredictable rhythm, the liquid expressiveness that mocked convention. Every failure crafted a sharper edge, a deeper well of resilience that he carried like a badge of honor into his next tryout. Then came the breakthrough that changed everything. Legendary comedian Rodney Dangerfield, mid-tour, invited Jim on stage. Under a spotlight that felt warmer than any he'd known, Jim exploded into life. He bent reality with impersonations, voices, physical comedy, so raw and exhilarating that the audience roared in disbelief. Dangerfield's approving nod sealed his ascension. Soon Jim was opening shows for comedy greats, packing clubs, and drawing scribbled invitations from producers hungry for fresh energy. It wasn't long before network executives watched him on In Living Color, where he debuted Fire Marshal Bill, a scorchingly absurd character who walked the line between brilliance and madness. Suddenly, Carrey's elastic face became a national obsession, and he was hailed as the enfant terrible of comedy, a whirlwind nobody could tame. Hollywood responded with glittering skepticism. Studios wanted his mania, but feared his unpredictability. Producers offered scripts laced with safe jokes, formulas he found suffocating. He refused them all. He insisted characters be molded around his instincts, the way the mask's grin stretched like liquid metal, the way Ace Ventura's gait flapped like a bird. He demanded creative control, even when executives scoffed at his demands. "Either you play it my way," he thundered, "or don't call me." In 1994, the gamble paid off with Ace Ventura, Pet Detective. Critics ridiculed the film's juvenile premise, yet audiences flooded the box office, drawn by Jim's combustible energy. Overnight, he became a bankable star, his $15 million salary eclipsing most comedians, yet the meteoric rise arrived behind a mask of unresolved emptiness. Next came Dumb and Dumber, a vehicle for derailment-level slapstick that smashed box office records and solidified his reign as comedy's crown prince. Yet while laughter enveloped theaters, behind the scenes, Jim felt a hollow echo. The applause faded faster than it arrived, leaving behind a cavern of self-doubt. To soothe the emptiness, he began taking Prozac in the late 1990s. He'd later reveal in a 2004 interview that the pills transformed life into a gray monotony. Everything was okay, but there were no real highs. In that dull haze, even his greatest triumphs felt tempered, as though the laughter belonged to someone else. Undeterred, he pivoted to superhero territory, with The Mask and Batman Forever, donning painted smiles and caped insignias, while battling personal shadows. He embraced The Cable Guy, a dark comedy exploring the twisted bonds of obsession, a thinly veiled mirror of his own clamoring for validation. Critics were divided, but Carrey's fans remained rabid, drawn to his capacity to swing from manic glee to unsettling intensity in the same breath. Each role became a double-edged sword, box office gold that deepened his internal wounds. By the end of the decade, Carrey's career soared, but life's tragedies mounted. In 1991, he lost his mother Kathleen to chronic health issues. In 1994, his father Percy passed away, leaving him to whisper a triumph that no longer felt triumphant. "Dad, I made it. but you're not here. The raw sting of loss drove him deeper into depression. He returned to Prozac, sought therapy, and tried every self-help mantra available, yet none filled the void. In studios and on red carpets, he maintained a warrior's grin, but inside, he waged silent wars against despair. He chopped his hair, altered his appearance, and experimented with method acting, in hopes of shedding the Carrey caricature and discovering the man beneath. It was a fruitless search, a man shaped by laughter yet haunted by his own echo. Then, in the early 2000s, Carrey surprised audiences again by embracing dramatic roles. Liar Liar revealed depth behind the comedic mask, while The Truman Show delved into existential anguish, mirroring his own reality TV existence in Hollywood's unforgiving spotlight. Critics lauded these performances. Carrey won awards and critical acclaim, but after the credits moments still felt empty. He was winning the world on screens, yet losing himself off camera. Framing his despair as art, he took up painting, each brushstroke a scream, each canvas a confession. He turned to meditation, seeking a silence more profound than any applause could deliver. Auditions, premieres, and interviews blurred into a montage of faces asking for more, as his inner monologue begged for peace. By 2005, after a string of personal losses and legal battles, he announced a self-imposed exile from Hollywood, trading studios for studios of another kind. Art studios, quiet rooms where color replaced dialogue and symbolism beat punchlines. Yet, even in retreat, Carrey's life remained anything but static. Re-emergence came unpredictably as the Grinch, his ruddy cackle revealed a tender core in eternal sunshine of the spotless mind. He excavated the ache of lost love. Weeping on screen, he offered glimpses of wounds he seldom shared publicly. Audiences wept with him, connecting to the tremor beneath his bravado. In those moments, mask and man merged, and Jim Carrey became more than a comic virtuoso. He became a mirror reflecting our own hidden scars. As the sun dipped below the Hollywood hills, Jim Carrey found himself at another crossroads. After delivering a haunting performance in Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, he reached a critical juncture. Would he remain the world's most elastic-faced comedian, or push deeper into uncharted emotional territory? The answer came in the form of the Grinch, a role that forced him to inhabit bitterness and tenderness in equal measure. Under layers of prosthetic makeup, he discovered raw vulnerability, watching audiences laugh at his grumpy exteriors, while feeling the ache of a character who merely craved love. For the first time, laughter and empathy merged in his artistry, offering a glimpse at the man behind the mask. Yet personal tragedy refused to stay off-screen. In 2005, the sudden death of his nephew, a vibrant young musician named Marty, shattered Jim's tenuous equilibrium. He retreated from green rooms and interviews, disappearing into his Brentwood estate, where canvases crowded every wall. Each painting bled with grief. Streaks of crimson and black collided in abstract compositions that spoke louder than any scripted line. His agent grew concerned. Studios sent scripts and calls went unanswered. Rumors swirled of a breakdown, but those closest to him understood the deeper truth. He was forging new tools to survive the void of loss. The darkest chapter arrived without warning. In 2015, his then-girlfriend, makeup artist Catriona White, died by suicide. The world learned of the tragedy in headlines that betrayed every nuance of Jim's turmoil. Court filings painted him as a villain, yet those who had witnessed his devotion knew otherwise. He flew to Ireland for her funeral, standing as a pallbearer for the woman he loved. In that damp parish church, the bright man who once chased laughter was consumed by regret and unanswered questions. He wrote publicly of heartbreak, defending himself against lawsuits that felt like salt in an open wound. The reaction was visceral. Some condemned him, others rallied to his side. But Jim retreated further, trading Hollywood premieres for meditation retreats. Over the next decade, Carrey's relationship with fame morphed into a deliberate dance of proximity and distance. He returned briefly in the series Kidding, playing a children's show host whose cheerful facade masked a crumbling personal life. In each scene, viewers glimpsed a man forging an uneasy truce with his demons. He spoke openly about transcendental meditation, inviting cameras to capture him in silence rather than on stage. His interviews shifted from sound bites to solemn reflections on the law of attraction and the healing power of presence. Stay gone were the rubber-faced antics. In their place stood a performer who used stillness as his greatest trick. But Hollywood never truly let him go. The Sonic the Hedgehog franchise offered a chance to reinvent himself for a new generation. As Dr. Robotnik, he twisted his features into a diabolical grin, tapping into a manic energy that felt both nostalgic and freshly menacing. Behind the scenes, he spoke of gratitude for roles that kept him tethered to community, premieres filled with kids clutching plush characters, families laughing in unison. For a moment, the laughter returned as a shared balm rather than an outlet for his pain. Today, at 63, Jim Carrey inhabits a quieter world. He still wakes before dawn for meditation, practices yoga in his private Brentwood studio, and paints under skylights that flood his loft with soft Californian light. His art has found galleries, and his NFTs fetch figures that echo his early check for 10 million gambit, though now the gamble feels more symbolic than literal. He remains estranged from the relentless news cycle, learning to let stories come and go without sinking into their undertow. Social media is a curated gaze at landscapes, sunsets, and the occasional painting titled Sigh of the Soul. Gone are the constant pleas for attention. Instead, he offers glimpses of serenity earned through decades of struggle. Yet the echoes of his past persist. Every performance carries the weight of survival, a truth only hinted at in the manic reels of In Living Color or the acrobatic contortions of Ace Ventura. He has said publicly that he no longer tries to be Jim Carrey, acknowledging the man once trapped inside the character he created. His voice, once a whip-crack of chaotic energy, now carries a measured calm. When he laughs these days, it's softer, an echo of wonder rather than a defiance of despair. As credits roll on this chapter of his life, questions endure. Has Jim Carrey found the peace he spent a lifetime chasing? Can the man who made us howl with laughter truly rest in stillness? The answer remains unwritten, painted in broad strokes on canvases we've yet to see. But one truth shines through every tear-streaked brushstroke and every elastic grin. He taught us that comedy can mask tragedy, and that our own laughter may hide the deepest cries. And perhaps, just perhaps, in witnessing his story, we learn to see beyond the mask, recognizing the silent storms within ourselves. In the dim light of his Brentwood loft, Jim Carrey often sits before a blank canvas, poised with a brush that trembles ever so slightly. Each stroke brings forth colors that seem to pulsate with emotion, fiery reds of anger, deep blues of sorrow, and amber hues of fragile hope. In this sanctuary of creation, he trades in the manic energy of his early performances for a meditative stillness that both haunts and heals. As his hand moves, he is no longer a comic chameleon contorting for applause. He is a man bearing fractal layers of pain and resilience. Painting becomes both ritual and confession, a way to translate unspoken grief into visual symphonies that resonate with anyone who has ever masked their tears behind a forced grin. The art community took note. Galleries once skeptical of his Hollywood persona now vie for his works, treating each canvas as a testament to a soul unbound by expectation. Away from spotlights and red carpets, Carrey's focus shifted toward causes that mirrored his own battles. He began to invest time and resources into mental health initiatives, lending his name and funds to organizations dedicated to suicide prevention and depression awareness. His experience with Prozac and public interviews about his darkest days lent authenticity to his advocacy. Viewers saw a man who had walked through an abyss and returned to guide others toward light. Yet Carrey refused the trappings of celebrity philanthropy that trade on glamour. Instead, he participated in grassroots projects, sitting at round tables with counselors and survivors, hearing stories that echoed his own silent cries. When asked about the work, he would smile softly and say, "If my laughter once saved me, I owe it to others to share what nearly destroyed me." His relationship with fans evolved with this newfound vulnerability. In an age where social media reduces lives to highlight reels, Jim chose deliberate transparency. He posted short videos offering guided meditation, urging followers to pause and breathe, to observe thoughts without judgment. Occasionally he shared snapshots of his paintings, unfinished canvases titled Restless Night or Echoes of Departure, and encouraged people to explore their own creative outlets. Comments poured in, some admitted they had never picked up a paintbrush, others confessed they felt seen for the first time. In these moments, Carrey realized that the same empathy that fueled his on-screen characters could forge genuine connections beyond laughter, weaving threads of shared humanity across the digital void. On rare occasions, he returned to the camera in interview settings that felt more like therapy sessions than promotional tours. With gravelly sincerity, he spoke of how fame had once felt like a comfortable prison, each joke, each role reinforcing a persona that bore no resemblance to the man within. He described acting as an echo chamber, where applause reverberated back but never filled the emptiness left by childhood traumas. Viewers leaned in, rapt by the contrast between the rubber-faced antics of his past and the quiet vulnerability of his present voice. It was as though the world watched a magician reveal his secrets. The smoke and mirrors faded, leaving behind a seasoned conjurer who understood that the greatest trick was not making people laugh, but inviting them to feel. Even his blockbuster return in the Sonic the Hedgehog series carried a deeper resonance. As the nefarious Dr. Robotnik, he unleashed manic laughter that sounded different, less a shield, more a testament to his willingness to embrace every shade of human emotion. Children clutched plushies outside theaters, but behind closed doors, Carrey found joy in connecting with young fans who saw not just the villain's maniacal grin, but the gentle kindness in the actor's eyes. He greeted them with warmth off-camera, signing posters with messages like "Stay curious" and "Your story matters." It was a subtle reversal of roles. Instead of him dispensing laughter as medicine, he soaked in their unguarded delight as a reminder that joy can coexist with sorrow. In conversations with close friends, he often returns to the metaphor of the mask. "I built a face that could bend and stretch to entertain the world," he once said. "But there was a time I forgot who was behind it." Now he wears no facade. The mask lies discarded on an easel by the window, beside half-finished paintings that surge with the contours of his true face, lines mapped by joy, furrows carved by grief, and eyes rendered in strokes of honest reflection. In this unguarded state, Carrey invites us beneath the spotlight, to witness not only the laughter, but the echoing void that it once filled. It is a courageous act of self-exposure that few performers dare, and audiences respond in kind, offering empathy instead of adoration, understanding rather than applause. As dusk settles and city lights emerge below, Jim Carrey often stands by his studio balcony, gazing at the horizon he once chased from Toronto to Hollywood. He reflects on a life that swung between extremes, ecstatic highs of chart-topping comedies, and crushing lows that threatened to silence him forever. But now, in this chapter of deliberate stillness, he understands that true triumph lies not in box office records or viral clips, but in the quiet acts of shedding old skins and embracing authenticity. He taught the world to laugh at absurdity, and in return, discovered that laughter could be a bridge to healing rather than a shield against pain. In each painted canvas, each heartfelt interview, he whispers a single message: no matter how imposing the mask, we all carry echoes of silent cries, and it is in sharing them that we truly connect. Every morning now, Jim wakes long before dawn, stepping barefoot onto the dew-kissed grass of his Brentwood garden. He sets out a simple ritual, 5 minutes of silent meditation, followed by a slow walk through winding paths lined with succulents and olive trees. Each step grounds him in the present, reminding him that life is measured not by box office tallies, but by moments of stillness. Gone are the days when he chased applause with manic fervor. Now he chases breath, presence, and the subtle shift of morning light through eucalyptus leaves. In these quiet rituals, he has found the solace that once eluded him on stage and screen. Later in his studio, he opens a vintage leather journal, its pages filled with sketches, haikus, and reflections on impermanence. He jots brief notes about a new painting idea, an anachronistic smile in moonlight, echo of childhood laughter, before returning to a large canvas in progress. The colors have shifted from stormy grays to hopeful ochres. Where once he painted violent waves of despair, he now blends sunrise pinks with soft lavenders. Each brushstroke is deliberate, even celebratory, a reclaiming of a life he once tried to exit. Friends describe his work as a visual diary, a map of personal rebirth traced in lines and pigments. In the afternoons, he reviews scripts for projects that resonate with his evolved self, A handful of filmmakers approach him for roles that require both comedic timing and emotional depth, characters who face internal struggles as urgently as they propel a plot. He is drawn to stories about healing, redemption, and the exquisite awkwardness of being human. Recently, he agreed to voice a character in an animated feature about a painter who rediscovers his heart through color. The irony is not lost on him, an actor turned artist voicing an artist turned actor in need of his own awakening. The role feels like destiny, a gentle nod from the universe to keep weaving his two greatest loves, performance and painting, into a single tapestry.